Hello community, welcome back to our exciting e-commerce microservice series. Today we are diving into the heart of our architecture, that is the API gateway. We will be setting up an Ocelot API gateway to seamlessly connect our product, order, and authentication APIs. But that is not all. We will also be implementing robust features like authentication, caching, and rate limiting to ensure our microservices are secured, efficient, and scalable. So buckle up and let's take our e-commerce project to the next level. You can see from our diagram that the API gateway is the head of this microservice. All requests are going through the API gateway before it is dispersed to the other APIs, as you can see in it. Now within this API gateway, we want to implement caching, rate limiting, and also we want to add authentication. When a user makes a request to any of the service in here, the response, we can cache it for maybe 60 seconds or a minute. Now within that time frame, if any request comes in with the same data, it won't be going to the API to get it. It will rather return it from the cache. Aside from that, you're also going to activate the rate limiting. Now this feature is going to limit the number of requests a user can send within a time frame. Let's say within the 60 seconds. We want our API to process 100 requests. Now, within that time frame, when the request exceeds 100, it's going to return a status code of too many requests. And in that, it won't respond to the excess unless the time has expired or elapsed. So that is the reason why we need to implement a caching and also the rate limiting to make our API resistant and also resilient and robust as well. We have already created a video on Order API, Product API, and also Authentication API. So if you haven't checked these videos out, check the video description. I have the playlist which houses all the other videos in it. Or I have in the video description, I also have the video link. So you can just go in there and I'll watch them in order. I've made them available in order. So you're good. All right, so let's start. We're going to create this under a new solution. So let's see what we're going to do. So let's launch our Visual Studio 2022 or higher, then click on Create New Project. All these projects have been created using the clean architecture. So yes, of course, this project too, we are going to handle this with clean architecture as well. Let's first create a blank solution to handle the project. So choose blank solution, and the name of the project here this is demo e-commerce .api. So let's have gateway solution. Okay, so API gateway solution. Maybe we can just copy this so the next time we won't need to be typing it again. All right, so let's choose location to save this project. After that, click on create to create the solution. So for us to create this API gateway project, we don't need any class library because we have all the necessary code embedded in one class library and we named it as shared. So we will only need the presentation and that will be the API. Aside from that, we're not going to expose this to Swagger and as a controller, so we can exclude this out, okay, when creating it. Let's do that. So right click, let's add new project. Okay, so with this, we choose our ASP Netcode Web API. Click on Next. And now in here, what we need that is going to be the presentation. So API gateway.presentation. And click on Next. So with this, we're going to exclude controller and also Swagger. Click on Create. Once we have this project created, we can rebuild this project and make sure everything is intact. Once this project is built, right-click on dependencies and let's install the Ocelot NuGet package. So that is Ocelot, and the current version is 23.3.3. So install that version. Aside from that, in order for us to integrate the caching, we need this cache manager. So you make sure you install this cache manager package too. So to verify whether these two packages are well installed, we can check from dependencies, packages, and now we have them installed here. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's rebuild this project again. It seems I'm having some issue with it. After that, we're going to add our C# library that we created as a shed. Okay. Let's wait for this to finish. And there you go. Right-click on Solution, then Add Existing Project. And that is our project that we have created so far. Now, in a shared library solution, we need to add this project to it. The reason why we are adding this is we're going to supply the scheme, authentication scheme, to the Ocelot. So scheme 2, we created the scheme here in the dependency injection. We have GWT authentication scheme. That is what we are interested. Only this. So the next thing is we can close all this. Let's go ahead and specify or configure our Ocelot. Now we know that we have our services running on separate ports. From port 5000 is for authentication. Do you remember that? 5001 is for product, and 5002 is for other API. So we're going to configure this Ocelot to run on 5003. That will be the head of it then. In order to do that, we go to our project properties, launch settings, and now this, we do not want to use HTTP. So we can get this cleared off. Then we have our HTTPS, and that is what we're going to be using. So let's clear this. We have HTTPS. So let's remove this. And the port for this is 5003. That is an HTTPS. When this app runs, we are not having any weather forecast, so we are not launching that. You want to remove that. Let's save this. The next thing that we need to do after configuring launch file here is to create the Ocelot configuration file. That is in JSON format. How do we do that? We go to our project, right-click on it. Let's add new item. Make sure you have a JSON file. And now within this, the file name is ocelot.json. Within this file that we're going to specify or configure our gateway, we have the upstream path template, downstream host and port. Then we have we're going to implement our rate limiter options and all the features that we need. So let's get started. what we need to do here is you have it in the bracket, as you can see, like this. In Ocelot, it works with routes. Then after that, it works with global configuration. So these are the base setup that we need. Now for our global configuration, we want this API to run on the port that we have specified our project to run on. And I believe you do remember, or you still remember. Great. So within this, we're going to have our base URL. So let's have our base URL. Now, what is the value for this? You and I know that it is HTTPS. It is running on localhost. And now the port is 5003. Isn't it? Now, aside from that, let's specify our rate limiter option. So in case the number exceeds, we want to display this custom message to the user. So let's have our rate limit options. And in that, we're going to have our quote message or our quota message. This should be here. So quota message. And that is exceeded message. So what are you going to tell the client? Well, I would say that you are overwhelming me with multiple requests. Okay, then I'll just have to, that you should relax more. Okay, so that is what I am giving out. You can also specify your own. Now we are done with our global configuration. The next thing that you're going to talk about here is to specify our downstream and our upstream. Downstream, it is what the Ocelot or this gateway will trace on it to interact with the service. Upstream is what the client will trace on it to interact with the gateway. Quite simple. So we have our up for client, down for API or for the Ocelot. Okay, now in our routes in here, let's specify. So this should be in this. And with this, you're going to have first, that's our downstream path template. And within this, you want to have an API, then authentication. And with this, in authentication, we have that is create or register. We have login and now get user ID. You can decide to explicitly configure each of the endpoints in here. But well, I believe you'll be asking yourself, is there any way that we can make this generic so that we can specify all the routes through? Yes, we can. And that is what I'm going to show you. Just pass in everything and you are good to go. That is our downstream. Now let's check our downstream scheme. So we need our downstream scheme. It is running on HTTP. Since it's a private, it is safe. Then we have our downstream host and port. Within that, we're going to configure this. Our host is 5000. This is for authentication, right? So maybe we can specify this on top here as authentication. And it is not just authentication, rather it is GWT authentication. And aside from it, we are going to specify our port. Now this port is also running on 5000. So the host is localhost. I forgot that. And at the port here, it is what? 5,000. That is the port that it is running on. Okay. So let's see, this is integer and it should not be a string. All right. The next thing that we need to do is to specify the upstream, what the user can access. Okay. And in order to do that, we come to the next line, and in here we specified our upstream. And now this is the same as what you have specified, authentication and everything. The next one that we're going to do, comma must be brought. The next thing is we need to specify the HTTP method. So method, which method do you want to allow through this endpoint? And here it should be array. And now we're having get method because you want user to get user by ID. Currently, this authentication API or this service support get. It also supports post because user can create. And that is all. We are not having delete or update. So we are not having put and delete. It supports two methods now. So if a client wants to send any different HTTP verb to this, it's going to reject it. The next thing that we need to configure is, let's have a rate limit option. We don't want user to be registering continuously like that. You want to handle number of requests within a time frame. And in that, we need a rate limit option. Now with this option, we need to specify client whitelist. Do you want to exclude any client ID? No, we want this to cut across all clients. So in that, we have to set it to empty array, that is list. The next thing is we want to enable rate limiting. And you know what? This is set to true, and I believe you know this. What is the period? Let's specify that. Within the 60 seconds period, we want you to process the number of requests. Which number of requests? We want you to have a request of maybe, for now, we're going to test it. So let's make it as 1. So within 60 seconds, process 1 request. In case the limit or in case the request exceeds more than 1, then it's going to reject it. That is where we have this message. But within this, after it has used 60 seconds to process this request, we want to wait how many seconds before we take in a new request. So we want to have period time span. This must be in seconds, so we set this to 10. That is what you need to specify for our rate limit option. Now we are done with this. Let's have a comma. Then the next one that we're going to have a look here, it is our product. So this is our product API. Now in our product API, we are going to, since we have authentication being used to protect our endpoint and our system, we want to make get, because for product, get is actually free for everybody, whether you're authenticated or not. Get is free. This is open to everybody. So let's configure that. And here, product API, and that is get method. So within this, we want to specify the same downstream and upstream. So here, this I'm going to do. We don't want to have a rate limit option to this, because when we consume this in a client, such as Blazor or any other client, user can navigate to different pages, and as soon as it returns, we must get the data from the API. So we don't want to have a rate limit option attached to this. So what I'm going to do here is, let's grab this. Then let's specify the path. And here it is API product. Everything. The same HTTP. It is running on 5001. Then in the upstream, let's specify what we need. So let's have a comma. And I'll specify the same as product. This method supports only get, nothing more. Aside from this, we want to have caching option because user can get this method or get this request, and we want to cache this response so that user will not be, or this endpoint will not be called often. Let's specify this, and we can do that by adding file cache option. Now this, we have time to live, TTL. It is in seconds. So every 60 seconds, you want it to do this. Cache it for 60 seconds. Now let's have region. Let's set this to default. And the next, we can have header. So maybe we have header. Okay, so let's put, and now with this header, I can say that this is e-commerce caching. Well, I can add control to that. ECC. Okay, so now we are done with this. The next thing that we're going to do here is quite simple. We can also comment this. Use a comment, have a comma, separate it. And now this method supporting only get, but we have other CRUD verbs in there. Let's also make sure get by ID is also visible and accessible to everyone. So get by ID, and that is get product by ID. This should also be public to everybody. Now let's grab the same thing as we've seen here, and I'm going to paste it once again. Okay, so in here, all right, so let's make sure we have the comma and everything set. You have to be extra careful when working with this. Okay, so now we have this, and we are now implementing the cache option. We have get by ID, and which is also having the same downstream as HTTP. We have our port the same since we are working on the same product. It is just product in here. Now you can see from this get by ID, we cannot say that we want to grab everything because this is limited to only an endpoint. So within that, we have to remove this. So API/product, and this corresponds with our endpoint to that, or that's our route to it. When you go to the product, get product by ID, instead of this, we need to specify ID because here we need an ID. You see? And it is get as well. Now, when we are done with this, the next thing that we're going to do here is also simple. Well, simple, trust me. Let's have another one. And now this, now we have get, so we have other ones like post. We have post, put, and then delete. And it is still under product. So with this, what are we going to do? This, or let's configure this to handle everything in there. So let's go in there, make a copy of this, and now paste it here. And let's specify the everything key in this too. That is this one. Okay, so we have this. Now let's change this from get to post and put and delete. Okay, so we are not caching this. So let's remove this cache. Now, what we need to implement here is also a different thing. That is authentication. And in that, we have to specify authentication options. And within this option, we need authentication provider key, and that is bearer. Aside from this, we need to specify the allow scope. We want it to cut across all. So let's have allow scope, and I will set this to empty. So we are done with our product API. Now let's go to the order. Now for order, before you can access this order, you must be authenticated, isn't it? But it is not all that you want to apply caching to. So as we did to the product, let's also do same to the order. Now that is get, so let's go and get this. So in here we have a product, and with this product, we did not specify any authentication in here because this user do not need to be authenticated before he or she can access this. And also when it comes to the get by ID, the same thing, but here we are going to implement caching, and for the post you must be authenticated. That's great. Now let's have a look on the next one by copying this. This is going to be under order. Now with the order API, it is coming as orders, and it is 5002 as a port. So let's make sure we have the same and here. Now from get, we want to also cache it the same. And now with this, let's change this to eCommerce caching control. So it is the same thing that we need to do. We want to make this get verb available. And also let's get by ID. So we go in there to grab get by ID. And that is get by ID. Now this get by ID, that is orders. So do the changes. And as you know, it is 5002. Okay. And with this, let's add authentication to this, because before you can access this, you must be authenticated. So from this get, let's implement authentication to this. And let's make it same to this too. Okay. Let's save that. Now let's have a look with the rest. That is post, put, and delete. We're going there to make a copy. And now here, let's have it. So you must be authenticated. We should not forget it. And it's even here. Okay, that is 5002. And it is others. Others. Okay. Now we are good. Let's save. The next thing that we need to do is to configure this Ocelot after we are done with the file to use this file, and this can be done in the program.cs file. So we have this, and we are removing everything. Okay. So in here, we're going to have builder.services, .services.add, and now here we're going to add Ocelot. But before we add this Ocelot, we should add a config file. So we're going to say builder dot, and that is configuration.add JSON file. What is the name? It is ocelot.json. We add that, and we can specify some options, and let's set reload on change to true. Okay, then we can go ahead and add this. So after adding this Ocelot, we want to also add cache manager. So add cache manager. Now within that, let's specify to use dictionary to handle the caching system. So we say this x marks to x dot with dictionary handle, and I've also added this. So you can see that adding this is very simple. It's quite simple. Now we need to add the authentication scheme. So before we do that, let's add using. Let's go to dependencies. Let's add project, and let's add the shared library that we just added. Now in here, we're saying that so we can have eCommerce dot shared library, then dependency injection, and we have this. So we can use this here as a scheme. So we're going to say that this is not shared container. We need authentication scheme. Okay, now this authentication scheme should come from the project. So .add authentication scheme, and this takes in the services, and also it takes in configuration. So this builder.configuration, and with this it should be builder.services, then configuration. Okay, but since you're going to make multiple calls to this, we need to add calls. That is, so let's see, and call stands for cross-origin resource sharing. So it allows the server to interact with clients and so forth. So let's put that in there. And here we are saying that it builder.services.add calls. So for our API, we want to pass in an option. Now with this option, we want to say this options.add default policy. Now this default policy, we want to allow any origin. So this default policy, we should specify the policy first. And here I'm going to say this is builder, which maps to this builder.allow any header, then allow any method, then allow any origin. Okay, so this is going to allow all method or ports to get access, because you might not know, or you will not know which port is accessing this, which client with the port. So we want to allow everyone. But for authentication, we have it set, so don't worry, it is safe. Okay, so aside from this, we need to use this course, and now we are saying that this app.use course, let's use this. Okay, let's save this. So we are done adding this course to this. Now the next thing that we need to do here is, we need to create a a middleware which should sign the header by attaching a specific header with a value. In the client, that is the services that we have attached to our microservice, which is the API, product, and the order. They would just check for that before allowing the access. And we did that. So if you go to the shed and you go to the middleware, we created this listen to only API. They are looking up for this header as a sign. So let's grab this. Then in our API, let's create folder and name this as middleware. Now with this middleware, let's create a middleware to handle what we need. And we're going to say that attach signature. So this is just a signature to request. This should take in a request delegate. And we say this is next. Now we should implement public async task. And now this task, we should have invoke async. Now this should take in HTTP context. We say this is context. Then in here, all that we should do here is to attach a header to the request. So we're going to say context dot, this is a request, not response, dot headers. Let's add this header. And the value to this, we say signed. And that is all. After that, we say await next, then context, execute the next middleware. So we need to register this. Let's copy this middleware, go to the program, and on top here, after the quote, we say app.use middleware, pass in the middleware that we created. Let's terminate it. After this, we need to use the Ocelot. So we say app.use Ocelot.wait. So you can see that here we are implementing the caching in the Ocelot because it has that capability, and we need to do that within. All right. And this should come. Yes, we don't want to make mistake for now. So this should come here. Let's go to the app setting.json and add our key and also the authentication section in there. So from the app settings, we add our key, and our issuer it is the same from the HTTP, that is authentication API port. The next thing that we need to do here is to go to the authentication API, and in that we navigate to the presentation, we check our controller, and for now we can use allow anonymous because for authentication we want to make sure everybody accessing this is authenticated. So we have it's not authenticated, it's open to the general public, right? So allow anonymous. So let's use this. Maybe when we get to get user by ID, you should be authenticated. So for this, you want to say authorize. You should be authenticated with it before you can have access. Okay. And since we have attached this, it's going to affect the request, the post, that's the register, and then the login. But when you get to this is going to override that, and this one will be authorized. We can save this. Let's also check for the next one. Let's see if we can protect our product API. Now from our product API, you can see that we have, when we go to the controller, all is open to, let's have anonymous. Because get product should be open to general public. Also, get by ID should be open to general public. But when you get to create, this should be authorized. Authorized. And now within the authorized, not just even authenticated user can have access. We want to make sure that here you have the role of admin before you can create. Let's grab this. And before you can update it, you must be an admin. Before you can delete, you also must be an admin. Let's check for order. For API, it should be authenticated before you can access that API. So let's pass from the controller, presentation controller, that's the others controller. Let's specify authorized here. You must be authorized before you can access this. So get other, any authenticated user can access. Get other by ID, he can also access it. Get client details, he can also access that. Okay, and I get other details, can also access that. When it comes to create other, yes, he can create other. Update other, he can do it. And now delete other too, he can do it. So this is how you want a system to be protected. So if you're authenticated as a client, accessing this endpoint, you can access everything as far as authenticated. But if you are not, you won't be permitted to access it. Here, it means admin can access it because admin is also authenticated and has the role of admin. Admin has a role protected under the product. That is where create, update, and delete should be done only by the admin. So now that we have all these sets, the next thing we're going to do here is let's make sure we make sure our system is running. But before we do that, let's check from our shared library, and I'll make sure this library has this middleware put in place. From the dependency injection, in the previous video we commented this, so we should make sure it's going to it blocks our request. Aside from that, let's check our authentication API. In the previous video, we specify a direct access or direct URL to that. We want to make sure we remove it since an API gateway is in session. So we go to, that is the service. This will come in the application. Okay, talking about the product API, not the authentication. So product API, we go to application, then we have our service in there. Where is it? Have you found yours? This is application, share library, this application. You have an interface, and that is a product. And yes, it's in order. That is in order API. That is where we get other details. So application, we have our service and other service. Great. That's where we're implementing this HTTP client. Now, when it comes to the user, we explicitly specify that in here. We're going to remove all this, and we're saying that it's an API authentication, and that is a controller name, and we're passing this user ID, and this should work. Let's save this as well. So order, let's make sure we also save this. Now we're going to run all this together. When we run it, let's check the output of each. So we're going to use this package manager console to run. So with this, we want to open to the presentation. So cd, then we have ls, we are in, so we can say .NET run. This is going to run on the HTTP port. Okay, so let's say cannot be applied. It's an HTTPS. No, this should be HTTP. That is for our API gateway solution. Yes, so that's HTTPS. Now let's check from our API. Okay, this is not what we are running. Okay, let's run this first. So let's get into it. So let's make sure this runs. Then, okay, so it needs to do this. So let's stop. Okay, this is running although, but let's rebuild this project again. So let's do it. Rebuild solution. That is done. So we can go ahead and now run this. So you can see that this is running on this port. So let's grab this. Then let's go to our browser. And in there for our API gateway, let's try to access this. So we're navigating to this port. Okay. Now you can see from here that there's a pipeline error here because you couldn't find this. Yes, we know. We are aware of it. Okay. Now with this, we can try to, so let's run, since we have an API ready, let's run the product. And so let's run the order authentication and let's try something, see whether the gateway is active and running. Let's navigate to the order API solution. Then we're going to check for, that is presentation, launch settings. Okay, so here this running on 5002. So let's see. Okay, so that's an HTTP. And that is what has been selected. Package manager. And now this is also running on 500. So let's grab this as well. We go to, and this is our product. Let's paste this and access this to, now you can see from here we have, service is unavailable. It just says that this service is running. Great. Let's see the other one. Now this is product. So let's go for the order. Alright, so we have this running already. Let's check this for our order API. Okay, so let's see the next one. So product, then I think there is a mismatch in somewhere, because when you check our order API, let's first see the authentication API. It is running on the port of, from the line settings, it is running on the port of 5000. So when you check our Ocelot, authentication should run on 500. Why is it? Yeah, for authentication. Now for product, it's running on 5001. That's for product API. Now let's go to product API. That is our product API. Let's check for properties, line settings, and our product is running on 5001. So when we check our Ocelot, it's running on 5001, and order is running on 5002. So let's go and check for order. Should run on 5002, but this run on 500, so this is wrong. This should run on 5002. So from this order, we check our line settings, and this should run on 5002. Okay. HTTP 5002. Okay, so let's rebuild this. Rebuild solution. So succeeded. Let's go to package manager. Now let's clear all. So let's show now this order API. So .NET run. So it seems there is a invalid closing in here, and that is why it is switching to default of 500. So let's close this. Let's check again. Yes, we need to remove one. Okay, then I think it is solved now. So clear this, run this again, and this should run on 5002. And yes, it is run on 5002. So we can check instead of 500 for our authentication. This authentication, we have an API. So this is our gateway 5002. This is going to be the order, and 5003 is our API. So let's see. Okay, so they're still running. Now we have order running. Let's make sure we have our product also running. So this is our product API. And now with this, let's rebuild this project first. So this is also running. It's built. Let's run that. So ls. Let's get into the presentation. ls, and we can see, so .NET run. This should also run on 5001. Of course, this is also running. So let's grab this. Let's go to our browser. And now from our order, we have our product, which is 5001. And this is also running. So we have gateway. We have our product. We have the order. So maybe here we can say this API / product, and it is still not giving us. Okay, now let's make sure our last API is also running, and that is authentication. So let's rebuild this. So this also built. Let's run that. So let's view. Let's get into the presentation. And in here we have it. So .NET, let's run. And you can see that is also running on 5000. So in our browser, let's have another tab, and there's 5000 service unavailable. So from here we have 5000, that is authentication starting. We have 501 as product. We have 502 as order, and 503 as what? Gateway. Now, you know, in the gateway, we say that we made a product, get product by ID, and now get product by list. We made them available. And here, you don't need to be authenticated before you can access this. So let's see. So API, then let's have a look with the product. So if I click on this, we should have the product list. That is, I think, 1 or 2 records in it. This is going to call the product API. Now let's wait if it's going to return information to us. Yes, we have it. So you can see that we have this in here. And I can also get this product by ID. And this by ID, I'm going to also maintain the same because I'm getting product by ID. That is 1. If I provide ID of 2, product request not found because I'm getting the results. So product requested not found. And I can now get it from here. Now let's assume I want to get orders. Now with orders, even with the ID, I am having no information. Let's check, let's inspect it here. We go to the network tab, and now this should give us 501. As soon as I make a refresh to this, we have 401. That is unauthorized. In order for us to access this and see it well, I have Postman here, and that is what we're going to be using to test it out. Okay, so in here, we have our port is running on 5003. That's an gateway. Let's log in because we've registered already, so let's log in. Now, in order to log in, I have authentication already. So that authentication, and from authorization is non-header. We don't need key here, so let's remove it. We're going to log in, and I click on, we need to add body. So in there we have an admin at admin, and there's a password. Let's try to send and see the response from the authentication API. We have a response that is invalid credential 401 bad request because the email that you provided is not the same. So let's have, I think I made it admin at admin, and the password was string. Let's try this, else we need to create new account. Okay, so you can see our get rate limiting option is working. One request needs to be executed within 60 seconds. And here within 60 seconds, I am making 2 requests. So I have this rate limit option working. Let's see. All right, great. So this is working. Now this is a token. So let's grab this token. Now we're going to make a request to the product detail. Defaultly, if I get order detail, let's see what will happen. So I'm using this. Now order detail header. Let's remove this header. And I'll click on send this. That is HTTPS, API orders, and now 1 order detail. We have 401 unauthorized. Let's go to the header. Then let's add authorization as a key, and now bearer as a value. Let's paste the key that we have. Let's click on send. Now let's wait and see. We still have 401. Okay, so let's find out and see the reason why we have token in here, but we are still having 401 as not authenticated. Let's go to our app settings and check it out from our API. Okay, so we have our key, change the key, and we have this. Okay, so our authentication API must run on HTTP, and that is the reason why. So let's rerun this again. And after that, we're going to get this order. So let's go ahead and try this out again. So click on this. Let's wait. All right, so you see that here we have the content in here, and let's try to get other ID from here. So let's specify ID 1. So let's make a request. So you can see that we have the other ID. Now let's go for details. This is going to call two APIs. That is it's going to call the other API, product API, and authentication API. So let's try this and check it out. All right, so you see from here that we're able to communicate between the three APIs and gather the record that we need, and now there it is. We have our name coming from the authentication API. We have product details such as the product name, unit price coming from the product API, and we have the client ID, other ID coming from the other API. Great. Now let's go and check up. We've seen how the rate limiting works. Now let's also check the caching. So we expose caching to this other list, right? When we check the Ocelot configuration, we expose caching to this other. We're going to cache this for 60 seconds. So let's try that and see. Now let's call this. So I click on this to get the list of others. Let's see. All right, so we can see it took us 6 seconds, 61 milliseconds for that. Now it has been cached for 60 seconds. So if I click on the next one, it should take in some milliseconds to do that. Let's see. Now it took 1075 milliseconds. Let's try again. It took 1526 milliseconds. Now we're going to try this because if 481 milliseconds, we're going to try this till it's the 60 seconds is out so that it can call it again. So that's 605 milliseconds. We keep trying for a minute. So let's try it again and see. So let's make the call. So here it is taking 1875. Get it again. 782. Again. Now 49. So in order for us to detect whether it is using the caching or not, this is what we need to do. We go to let's go to our other API. And now from the other API, let's introduce delay. So that is this. Let's go to other controller. And now here get all audits. We want to introduce delay. So let's say await tax.delay. Let's delay it for 4 seconds. And now let's rerun this. While this is running, we make sure that our orders, that is the upstream, has this cache option. So let's set this cache option to maybe 30 seconds. Or maybe let's make it 20 seconds so we can test it quick. Let's rerun this also. Now they are running, so let's go and check. Now initial call should take more than 4 seconds and some milliseconds because we are delaying for 4 seconds. So let's wait and see. So you can see that it took us 20 seconds since it needs to communicate with an API, and now 20 seconds and 92 milliseconds, right? Now the next call, let's check and see. You see it took 701 milliseconds. So you can see it has the record or the data has been cached. And now we can call this. And when 30 seconds elapses, it's going to make another call again. And as you can see, it took us 6 seconds, 20 milliseconds. Another call, and I took 33 milliseconds. So you can see that the caching here, it is working. And the number of seconds that you provide determines how your record or your cache is going to last for. So if you're having data whereby you do not need to modify it frequently, then you can extend the cache time, maybe a day, 2 days, 24 hours. You can expand this in seconds, and now it's going to make it quick retrieval as well. All right, so we've tested our rate limiting, we've tested our cache options, and we've tested for our authentication as well. All right, so our API Ocelot here, it is working as expected. You can try your hands on this. You can try with more examples, and it's going to be beautiful, trust me. Now, the last thing that we need to test here is to check if the row base, it is only administrator who can create product. User cannot. Now, as I speak, the token that we are using here is an admin token. So let's go and try to create a product. But before we do that, let's make sure we have the properties for our product API. So in our product API, we go to our solution. Then from entity as what product, we need name, price, and quantity. So let's go to the postman and let's have post. So this is going to be product and it should be post. Let's go to body, and in here let's remove this. We need name, so let's set name to, let's say, net product. Then we need quantity, so let's quantity, and we're saying that this is 45. Then price, and we are saying this is 100. Now we have token attached to the header. This is our body. Let's make a post and check it out. You can see from the response that Netcode product has been added successfully, isn't it? Now, as soon as we try to get our product, so let's change this to get our product. And now we're going to have this product just added in the response. You can see we have it in here. Great. There is an admin. Now let's go ahead and then create another user. So let's have register. And now with the registration, let's make sure we have authentication API. And that is this one. Let's go to solution. And in here, we're going to check for our DTO or entity. So our domain, entity, and in here, that is a app user. We need name, telephone, and etc. Right? All right. So I have a default one, and from the email, let's make it at user user10@user.com. So that is an email. Let's set the row is string. So here it is a normal user. So we're going to leave the row as it is. Let's make a post. Now this is the authentication. And /login. That is a route. Let's make, okay, so this should be post. Method not allowed, understood. Let's make a post to register. And now we have an invalid credential. So this is register. And of course, Let's click on that. Yeah, so being registered. Now let's go and log in. So we log in, and in logging in, we need to have just an email and a password. Okay, so try to log in. Well, so our rate limiting is working. Let's wait for some time. That is a minute. Try this again. And now we have our token. Now this token has no user. So even when we check this token from gwt.io, so when we check the token in here, we could see that this token has the claim as string. So that's the default one. We have the email address. And now watch out, the row here is a string as a row. Okay, so we could have cleared that, or we could have assigned another name to it, but let's maintain the row as you can see from here. Now, aside from that, let's go back, and here we're going to make a call. So you copy this token. Now let's go to the header, and this is an admin token. So we're going to remove this, and let's paste the string token. And within that, we're going to make a post. So let's have a look, API, and we have product. And with this, we need to go to the body. We need to specify the product. So with this product, we need the name, quantity, and price. Now the name is string, let me say just now. Quantity, we have it as 120 and a 50. This is not admin. Check it out. So you can see that at the end we had 403, that is forbidden. 401 means you are not authorized, but 403 means forbidden, you are not required. So as you can see from here, we have this, you are not allowed or required to access, right? Then you're out of access, 403 as forbidden. So this tells you that only an authenticated user with the role of admin can access this endpoint. So we can say that our API or our microservice is active, kicking, and running perfectly as well. But there's one thing left, and that is going to be the test. How do you create unit test? To test some of the controllers, some HTTP service, and also a repository. In the next video, we're going to talk about testing, and that will be all for the whole series. So that is it. Thank you so much for watching this, and I believe you've seen or you've learned something here. If so, then click or hit on the like button beneath this video, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. Check our playlist. We have a lot of informative content for you. Thank you, and I'll see you again. Till then, take care.